I'm the chair of the building committee. I'm going to give you some quick intros of the people that are sitting up here, although I suspect you know most of them already. And then we will get into some information. So Superintendent Gordon Smith, Ryan Quimby, Director of IT, Frank Page, Principal, Thomas Christensen, Town Manager. Yeah, doing them already. Dory Brooks and Julian Corsi from Jones Woods Architects, Helen Fantini from Cincinnati McKean Associates, Benjamin Murphy from Skancer, our owner's project manager, Greg Thompson from the school committee, and Cora Gopin, who is the chair of the pool building committee. Not to be confused with the school building committee. So that's all of us. We've got some good information for you tonight. Dory, I think I got it in front of you on the slides.
Okay.
So here are all those names. And you've already seen their faces. So we're trying to make this as efficient as we can, because that's how we roll. So as you can see, current plan of the project is right here, right? We're coming into the fall of 2023. There's going to be a townwide vote on November 7th. That vote will have two separate ballots. One ballot is to approve a debt exclusion for a school project. The second ballot question is to approve a debt exclusion for a pool project. As you can see, we've been at this since 19. I personally have been involved in this since 2019. And now we're getting up to the good stuff. Right? We're getting up to figuring out, do we have a project going on? And what does that mean for the town? So, just quickly, assuming for argument that the vote is successful, the design team will move quickly into detailed design, which will take approximately 12 months. And then we will begin construction next summer, occupying in the fall of 26, at which point the existing building would be demolished, and then all of the athletic fields would reach their final state. So we have received a lot of questions because there's been some confusion about how long things will take and what does that mean for children currently in the system. So we put together this chart. So if you're a freshman, if you're in ninth grade right now, your senior year, again, presuming things go according to plan, your senior year you would be in the new building. And then that staggers backwards. It's in a little waterfall. I have a daughter who's in 8th grade, so she would be here for the start of her junior year. So fairly close. Anybody that's in 5th grade or below, they're entirely in a new building, to the extent that that's what we do. But I'm going to turn this over to Frank Page, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the existing building and its conditions.
Pass you down or my So just to talk a little bit about the existing site, the first slide I'm just going to walk us through is the exterior, and then the second slide will walk us through the interior of the building. I think, even though obviously it's a bigger part of the site, I do think that what we're going to see in the exterior plan here is a microcosm of some of the issues that we have on the inside. Now, this building, when it opened in 1961, it was designed for the generation who was going through this school in 1961, where a lot of those students took the school transportation, they rode on the bus, they came to the building that way. It was a time where a lot of the parents dropped them off or kids drove themselves. So if you look at the layout in terms of pickup and drop-off, we do not have a separate pickup and drop-off route for the buses and then for parents to drop their children. So with that, we do have some log-jam issues in the horseshoe, just because that is a space where both the buses and parents go to bring their children, both at the beginning of the day and also at the end of the day when they come to pick them up. And with more students who are driving themselves and parents also using the parking lot to drop their students off, we also don't have walking paths for those students who walk to the building. It just was designed really, like you said, for the buses to drop the kids off in the front of the building, not necessarily for kids to park down by the stadium and walk their way through. So, there's always that concern. we have staff and students, lots of people navigating through that space in a very condensed period of time, especially at the end of the day when at 1:45 you see that mass exodus of 800 plus people leave this building all at once, with the new design, a number of the things that you see there are taking some of these things into consideration and trying to make this space work more functionally, but also safer. So with that same thing in mind, on the back part of the building, you can also see where the district offices are. That space is typically where we have a lot of our drop-offs for things like supplies, but it's also where our students with high needs, special needs are dropped off as well. The building was not designed for that. So as you can see, if you look out your window here where all these recycling bins are, that's also our space where we have our students with special needs being dropped off each day. It's not the most welcoming space. I would definitely like to have something a little bit better and a little more functional. But it's the one that gives them the best access to the building. And there's another space that can be a little bit of a logjam because we also have our cafeteria workers parked back there, the custodians parked back there, the IT staff, and then we also have some parents try to utilize that space as well, but we do really try to restrict that for our high needs populations, which it gets a little bit difficult because, like I said, it's not designed for that use. So there's just a number of things I'll also highlight in that slide that, like I said, the design for the exterior of the building was definitely designed for 1961, and while we retrofit and make things work for today's student, it is not necessarily what I would call ideal. So the existing building, I think you've heard the expression before where people just say that the bones are good. So structurally, this building is predominantly concrete in order, so it has survived the years, it does well. Where we're, I don't want to say deficient, but we're concerned in terms of the aging of some of our systems, the electrical system, the mechanical system, the building shell itself, where we're talking about things like not necessarily just ventilation, but also insulation. Those things are in a number of these areas beyond their expected life. So when, I'm not sure if anybody heard today, we did have a small mechanical fire in one of our classrooms today. One of the motors in one of our Univet units fried, and we did have to start school about 15 minutes late today because of that. So that is, I would say, the third time where maintenance this year has impacted our students. This is the first time I was honestly in the first day of school, where was it?
Not maintenance, mechanical.
Mechanical. On the first day of school, we had a power outage because when we had 1,000 people now return to the building at the same time, we did do some power upgrades over the summer, and the system did, we'll say, glitch, and we did have, we were without power in about 25% of our building for about 2 hours on that first day. Not an ideal learning environment. During that first week as well, we also had some sewage backups where we had some of our sewer lines in our science labs backing up, and we had to work with DPW to rectify that problem as well, and that's more just connected to older plumbing in the building. So things we addressed, we worked through, but I will definitely highlight that the maintenance issues, I've been an administrator here since 2011, it just seems like every year they kind of increase. So, who's actually
Can you? Hi, sorry. I'm Dory Bush from Justice and Architects. I want to mention the MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority. You'll hear more about the MSBA, but the MSBA is a state agency that provides grants to new school projects. And those grants are particularly, the support the state gives is towards educational spaces. When a school district applies to enter the program with the MSBA evaluates schools, and they're looking at things like the infrastructure, the systems of the school, and how they're functioning, and whether that's impeding education. They also look at the educational spaces themselves and see if they're up to grade. And what you see in this slide is on this side an image that shows the 3 different generations of construction of this building. The school was designed by Alderman McNeish, which is a quite hallowed firm in the valley that's been here back in the 50s. Many schools in the valley were designed by this one firm, and we come across them in our line of work all the time. And they designed the first part of the school in 1959, the second part in 1964, and then a different addition was done in 1973. Those first two parts were really designed together. In 73, it was actually when the school added a vocational wing. So you see a lot of the spaces that were meant to be shop spaces that were then converted over into offices. So the school has this kind of funny history that you see going through the building. You can feel that addition and addition kind of process going through it. And on the other side, you see a map that shows you in red all of the educational spaces that do not meet state guidelines for size. And this is important because the MSBA is contributing to educational spaces. So when you think about renovation or just merely upgrading the school, they would not contribute to the upgrade of spaces that do not meet state standards. So a fairly sizable amount of the school, educational-wise, are actually below state guidelines, because those guidelines didn't exist when the school was built, and those guidelines have changed over time. So we've had 5 public meetings, and there have been a lot of questions about the process here in terms of how we go about our job as architects in this feasibility study process. And it is an incremental process, and along the way, initially we start out by looking at the existing building, assessing things like the educational spaces, having our engineers assess all of the infrastructure. And one of the requirements of the project is that we share the information as what it would mean to bring all of the building systems up to current building code standards. So remember, 1959, first swing of construction. The building code didn't exist until 1973 in Massachusetts, and we're now in the 10th edition. So this school was built prior to 10 editions of the building code. And there are multiple other codes, energy code, plumbing code, etc. So in trying to compare what you get from a new building built today to what it would take to bring all of these systems up to today's standards, that's one of the numbers that we look at, and one of the things we'll talk about a little bit more. We also looked at what an ad renovation would look like, where we, radically altered the wall systems and floor systems and ceiling systems to create spaces that meet the educational plan for the school. The difficulty with both the ad renovation and the base code upgrade of options for the school are that those things that were logical in 1959 for a structure are very difficult to incorporate contemporary ventilation systems, fire suppression systems. This building doesn't have a fire suppression system. It doesn't have air conditioning. It has most of its ventilation comes through these univents, like the one that is on fire today in the art room. So bringing it up to today's standards means bringing systems in at a level above ceiling, and there is actually a limited ceiling space. So amongst the difficulties that we explored with the school building committee of making changes is how this building would support the new infrastructure that's required. Electrical is, as Brent mentioned, the largest infrastructure issue of the school, and has been for quite some time. But in looking at making changes, we're also looking at bringing it up to today's code for ventilation, which you've no doubt heard through COVID was a real challenge for many schools. They lacked ventilation, outdoor air exchange rates. So those were all part of the initial feasibility study. The committee's goal was also to keep costs low operationally over time and to make decisions around this building that related to the next 50 years. So rather than trying to solve the problems of the last 50 years of the building, trying to plan ahead for the future. And then the committee's goal was always to maximize the grant they could get from the MSBA and not make foolish decisions in how they were presenting and requesting assistance for this project, and to make an environmentally sustainable school. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We heard from the community throughout those 5 conversations with the community as the feasibility study was going through, and again, some of those issues were reinforced by the community meetings. The goal for a sustainable project, a project that provided for the best educational experience for students, a strong commitment to the recreational and community use of the school, and the desire to make that more present in the project, opening the school up to the community in ways that currently are not safe and reliable because of the aged systems in terms of security. So could parts of the school that the community would access be safely accessed in a broader way than is currently the case. So all of those issues were addressed. So as I said, the feasibility study process is a three-part process. Initially, we helped the school building committee assess a variety of different options, a base code upgrade, which we also refer to as base repair, an ad renovation, a new school with a community building, because this project is unusual in that it has a significant amount of community use within the building. The initial phase of that feasibility study was really developing costs based on other comparable projects going on in the state and the cost of public school construction today in the state. So we haven't done any design, but we were assessing how much based on the educational program goals for this project, these types of options might cost, so that the committee could present this to the community, hear the community's feedback, and then opt in to pursue specific options. In all the community meetings, the community has strongly favored the new school construction option. This was the information that was presented early on. As we entered into schematic design, this continued to be the focus, and we were able to bring the cost down from this point, both because the community made very prudent decisions financially, but also because we were able to find incentive points with the MSBA for sustainability that would help also on the grant side.
Continue these processes. So just to go through the specifics of the numbers up here. So we'll start with the school project. So the total estimated construction cost is $147.5 million. So at the end of schematic design, once the scope was fully detailed and the documents were fully ready, we sent the documents out to two estimators. There was an estimate process. We got both the estimates back. The delta between the two estimates was marginal, which made our reconciliation process fairly easy and straightforward. And so what you're looking at now, that $147.5 million number, is the reconciled estimate for the school project. And then on top of that, the other project costs, these are the fees and the contingencies that are necessary to build this scope of project. So $29.9 million more there, which brings the approximate project cost to $177,460,645. You'll see just below that, the school project is an MSBA project, so there is a grant associated with it. We're expecting the grant to be in the woods of $63,145,648. Which would be the resultant of $114,314,997 as the town share, the expected share for the high school project. And on the pool project, once again, this is not an MSBA project. There's no state aid tied to this project. They will not reimburse for pool projects, that is. So you'll see once again the estimated construction cost. This was developed by a professional estimator similar to the school project. We had $13.997 million for the construction alone, and then on top of that, the other project costs, $2.798 million, brings you to a total of $16.795 million. And so you can see on the far right, we've included a column, just a combined column of the two projects so that the town's aware of the magnitude of the two put together. And so the total approximate town cost for both projects we're expecting to be roughly $131 million. And so this, we've shared at past community forums. We find it kind of a helpful snapshot. This is taken from a Mass School Building Authority's website. And essentially it's showing the historical average of construction costs on school projects in the Commonwealth. And so the thing to note here, you see this orange line that starts off kind of steady and then just skyrockets. So that's the average cost, the average construction cost of school projects in the state. The other thing to pay attention to here at the bottom is this green line. So the green line represents essentially what the state will reimburse for construction costs. So as we mentioned before, they do cap that number. Currently, the state is reimbursing $393 a square foot of construction costs. You can see on the far right of the screen, we called out where your project, East Long Meadow High School project is, and we're just to the right of that orange line, which is a good thing. That's showing that we are slightly under the average cost, the average current cost. So our cost per square foot is about $770. Some of these other ones that you see higher go up to $900 to $1,000 a square foot. So we just find it helpful to show this and kind of help explain some of that cost and why things are where they are at right now. I think there's a few economic drivers behind this that are causing this incredible spike that we see. Obviously the inflation, interest rates increasing, but just the cost of labor. So there's a lack of skilled laborers, something that kind of started back in the recession of 2008. A lot of workers got out of the construction industry due to uncertain times and needed to provide for their families and what have you. And I don't know that we've ever truly recovered from that in terms of skilled laborers. There's still a shortage, and with that, the laborers who are out there, because of the increased cost of living, they're demanding higher wages as well. So that's on the labor side, it's been spiking like crazy, and also on the material side, just things like tariffs on the imported goods. The COVID-19 pandemic, how that disrupted the whole supply chain. It's both on the labor side and the material side. So we showed this just to kind of give you some perspective to where the current climate is at, and we'll set the stage for the rest of this.
Thank you, Ben. I'm Greg Thompson, I'm the school committee chair. I'm also a member of the school building committee. So I'm going to talk about tax implication, because that's a lot of what a lot of us are concerned about. As Ben just alluded to, costs are up right now, as they always go, continually up. But we don't expect them to go down ever, and they'll continue to go. Is that fair to say that? Yeah, so the other point that Ben made is that we have $63 million on the table from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. As was stated before, we applied 7 times. We've been in the process for about 10 years now. So if not for today, if not for this vote, then we're looking at getting back in line. We're looking at having access to that $63 million and starting the process all over again. So that being said, with our tax implication, if you look at the approximate town cost, that's $114 million. That's half of the $63 million reimbursement from the state. So our cost is $114 million. 16.7 for the school, for the pool. We have a pool building committee that's completely separate from the school building committee. That pool building committee's been working diligently to make that number as palatable as possible. The facility will be beautiful and will be useful, but it's nothing too exuberant. So it's going to be a nice facility, and that costs a lot of money. What we want to do is have access to the community during the day, and hopefully have that staff by rec. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. Anyway, back to the tax implication. Average assessed single-family house in East Long Meadow, $339. So if you add up all the values in town and divide them by the number of properties in town, $339 is the average value of East Long Meadow currently. Relative to that value of the current taxes on that house would be $65.24. So that's a snapshot today, 2023. In discussion with Kim Collins, our Director of Finance for the town, in discussion with Town Council, we had a meeting with Bond Council as well, who know how to structure these things. What's going to happen is we'll get a construction loan for the town for probably about 2 to 3 years, and that'll depend on rates and things of that nature. In 2 to 3 years, we'll look to go out to the bond market and fund the whole project at $114 million. And so the tax implication of that 114 and the 16 for the pool gives us a grand total of $131 million. According to Bond Council, typically a project this size, and we have options of 25, 20-year bond, but typically we go with a 30-year note, Again, that's subject to change based on interest rates at the time when we go out to that bond. But if you were to go now, safe to say, we might most likely go with a 30-year bond, and these would be the implications for that. So in this example that I gave you, your assessed value is $339,000. Your tax implication would be between $1,145 and $1,190, so just under $1,200. Now that takes into an assumption of a 5% interest rate. Again, that's today's interest rates, subject to go up, subject to go down. But we want to give you an idea of what it would cost for the average house. If you want to do your own math, the cost per household, per 100,000, that's 336 through 351 per 100,000. So if you look at your assessed value on your property card, you can go right online and get your assessed value from your tax card. You can do that now as well. So yes, we understand it's an expensive project for the town. We believe that it's the most beneficial to the town. We believe that we've done our due diligence to get the cost as affordable as possible for the town without losing what this town needs. And we believe that this will bring us into the future. So again, will anybody's bill be $1,200 exactly? No, it depends on your assessed value. But we wanted to give you a general idea of the tax implications and what it might look like today.
Good evening, everybody. So I have the cost of doing nothing slide, which doesn't happen in our office. So actually, everybody did a nice job of explaining this for me, mostly Dory, thank you. No facility improvements whatsoever. So the school will be the school. And as Dory pointed out, most of the classrooms are already under the size they're supposed to be to teach kids. We'd have to somehow figure out how to bring this school up to code, the base repair, that you saw that laundry list of projects that added up to 110, 115, $120 million. That sort of scares me because, like Gordon pointed out, we have 2 months to do this work that does not disrupt the students' July and August. And like you said, that is actually compounded because by the time the money for that project is appropriated, we're already in July. Add on 4 to 6 weeks of bid documents, we're already in September. So if you get a project approved, you don't get to do it next year, you do it in 2 years. And it's a lot of projects. And like everybody's been saying, when you start doing these things, you start tripping on these other code things, and we're most likely going to have another vote to do 2 of those things on that list. Whole-scale accessibility expenses, risk not obtaining MSBA approval, obviously you got to get back in line. Because they saw the green line that Ben pointed out, the big jump in reimbursement, the amount of projects that they're going to be accepting per year is going down. Meaning, if we thought we'd be back in 10 years, it'll probably be 14 to 15. The next process, MSBA will not participate in the reimbursement of the feasibility study, which obviously we're now. No improvements to community resource, the athletic fields, concessions, restroom, upgraded auditorium, none of that. Potential reduction in property values, possible reduction in enrollment, and then the New England Association of Schools and Colleges accreditation. And then there's another big one on that's not on here, $63 million from Mass School Building Authority. If the voters are no, we miss out on a very large chunk of money that, in all likelihood, we won't see it again for another decade and a half, maybe more.
I am Jill DeCourcy with Jones Woods Architects, one of the main architects on this project. Now we get to move on to the rather exciting exciting topic of the new school. What will be included in the new school building, what will be included in the site, and all of the benefits that come from the new building, both for students and the community. So here we have the proposed site plan. Importantly, you can see the relationship between the new school and the existing school building. This is the new school. You can see the existing building is ghosted above it. What you can see is that the two buildings do not overlap. So the new school could be constructed without interrupting classes in the existing school building. When the new building is complete and students move in the summer of 2026, then the existing school building would be demolished and the remainder of the site could be developed into the rest of the site program. With the proposed site plan, we have completely reworked site circulation. So you would have safer and easier to navigate circulation both for vehicular traffic and also for pedestrians. We're separating the bus and the car drop-off areas. So responding to the difficulties that are going on today with drop-off, easing that by separating those streams of traffic. You'll notice here that we have discontinued the access to the site from Norton Street. So at this point, you would have just a few accessible parking spaces rather than access to the site in that area. In terms of the athletics program, we have the existing turf field to remain, but then all of the other sports fields get reconstructed. And by reconfiguring those, we're able to fit in a few additional fields. So the new site would include 2 softball fields. So currently softball is not able to practice on the high school site, and they would be able to with the new building. Additionally, we have a new concessions building by the game field that would have public bathrooms. The press box would have an accessible ramp. There would be reconstructed tennis courts with pickleball striping. And then finally, I would just mention that there also is a 450 kilowatt solar PV array planned on the roof, incorporated into the cost. Thank you. And that would cover about a third of the school's energy use. Okay, so now moving into the building. On the left side, you see the current plans for the proposed high school. The ground floor plan is above and then the second floor plan below. You can see we have 4 wings, a athletics wing, arts wing, 2 two-story academic wings to the south. These are all organized around a central spine where you have the media center and the cafeteria, and that serves as really the kind of a social core to the school. On the right side here, we have a table showing a breakdown of the different program areas for the school. There is the proposed school on the right, and then the existing high school is broken down similarly on the left for comparison. You can see at the bottom that the new school is a little bit bigger than the existing high school, but we have a somewhat different distribution spaces within the school. Most importantly, things would be more efficiently arranged and designed to support 21st century learning and to facilitate just the way that students want to be learning today. Some key things to notice between these 2 columns, some areas that are getting bigger are the core academic spaces. So your classrooms and your labs are getting larger. The hands-on learning studios, so things like culinary arts, the STEM lab, robotics, those would be more spacious, more space for those. And then the special education spaces, where you would have a larger program and a variety of spaces available there. Compared to schools in the 50s and 60s, like this building, which had fewer staff, we've had a lot more staff in the building today. So paying attention to admin spaces and also guidance spaces is important, creating very efficient and functional staff areas. We have a number of meeting rooms throughout the school, a lot of areas for pull-out space, one-on-one support for students, parent-teacher conferencing, and guidance for students. We also have a number of student small group spaces, so promoting the ability to do project-based learning. And then finally, I would just add that there was a lot of consideration given to it, and the school building committee did decide to include the district offices, pupil services, town IT, and LCAT within the new school proposal in order for those important spaces to remain functional and serving the community as they do today.
Thanks, Celia. So what does this all mean as we move into this new space? Well, first and foremost, it means that we have a much more welcoming environment. You all walk through those doors, and those are the same doors that were there in 1960. Mr. Page referenced how we have our students who are handicapped and riding buses that are equipped for handicapped students, but then have to navigate this back door area. It's not a building designed to handle some of the things that we are handling every day. And just thinking about this morning, our students are incredibly flexible, incredibly cooperative. They were outside working with us. We started school about 20 minutes later than we usually do. As they walked in, and I was greeting them down by the art room, they're walking behind me, a huge fan that's blowing out so that we can get rid of the smell of smoke. And one says, "Good morning, Mr. Smith," shakes his head and says, "We need a new school." But if we move into this space, it's much more welcoming, designed for today's students and some of the challenges that we encounter on a daily basis. And it's designed to be inclusive not only of the student body, but of the community. So it has spaces that are much more collaborative. It takes advantage of this incredible campus and uses outdoor spaces. And it has spaces and a system, electrical system, that will handle the technology that we're using today and will be using far into the future. And it will be built so that our staff can work much more collaboratively and start to not only partner with each other, but partner with our students. What does it mean for the community? Well, not only do the students get to utilize some of these incredible spaces, but the community does too. I think all of you know we have an incredibly robust recreation program in town. The recreation program partners with us, and they utilize not only our gym spaces, but the pool and all of the fields. And they would be utilizing a gym that's larger than the current gym we're using today. They would also be able to access an alternative physical education space that can be used for many different things, such as a yoga studio. Additionally, the pool building, or keyword here, natatorium, would be accessible both from the interior of the school, so our physical education program could continue utilizing the pool. And when the PE program is not utilizing it during the day, it can be accessible from the outside of the building while locking and securing the inside of the building so that, say, our seniors come from the senior center and do water aerobics, utilizing the transportation that's already in place with the trolley system. One of the additions of any new building project, and I just talked about securing the building, is making sure that we bring up to the current technology all the security features of any given building. Unfortunately, in the world we live in, we do have to worry about securing all of our buildings. Currently, all the buildings in East Long Meadow have camera systems, all doors are locked once students arrive, and the camera systems can see throughout the perimeter of the building, the main door, and all doors operate with a buzzer system. Buildings such as Meadowbrook and now Mapleshade that have had a door upgrade have security vestibules where it's a double buzzer system. And you buzz into the first line of doors, talking to the person in the office, and then as you work through that first line of doors, there's another set of locked doors. So should there have been any kind of mistake, should someone have walked in behind someone else who was being buzzed in, you still have a secure vestibule there. This building would have something similar to that and have all the newest security features, newest camera systems, so that we can maintain security throughout the in-school day.
Out of all the meetings, I think this is the first time we got a round of applause. And I want to say thank you for that, because photovoltaic is very important. And this is a school that was built in the 2020s, and it's going to be completely electric with heat exchangers and be very efficient, but it's going to use all electricity. So we felt, as a school building committee, that it's a high priority to include photovoltaic, because that's going to take care of about a third of our costs to run this building, which we thought was important to not only do it for the taxpayers of this community, but to show the kids of our community that we believe in this environment, we believe on doing it, making a change for the better, and investing in it. And there's a return on our investment. We will make the money back on that. So just want to talk a few things about sustainability. It will be a LEED certified school in accordance with the MSBA green incentive points. We have received additional points because of the makeup of the building, and we are proud of that as well, and we'll continue to do that. We are a stretch code community already, so the code, the building code in South Meadow must meet the stretch code, which is more stringent than the former building code, so we'll be relatively energy efficient in those means. As I said before, we'll be an all-electric system, okay? Heating, cooling, hot water. The only thing non-electric will potentially be the pool heat. So, but everything else will be electric, which is why that PV is very important. The exterior envelope, Somebody mentioned before, this building has no insulation in exterior walls. How many people's houses have no exterior insulation in their exterior walls? Right? Okay. This will be way more efficient. We're pretty excited about that. Oriented to optimize the daylight, so the sun's over there. All the classrooms are going to be on this side, and the back side. You saw those back wings. Very important for that. Lots of sunlight, and there's those fancy sunshades. We'll show them another time. Actually, I think these are done right. Yeah. So, optimizing the sun, getting the heat and the light, but not always the heat in the wrong time. Is that correct? Okay. And then the walkable campus. So the opportunity to walk around the whole building. We'll have most of it paved. It's certainly accessible to drive to the fields. We'll have parking off the north, but only a certain amount of spaces for that. But like I said, really exciting, 450 kilowatts of solar panels on the roof. And really would like to showcase that, because it's important. So. And now we can talk about the pool, which is very exciting too. So I'm going to hand it over to Coach Cora.
Hi everybody, I'm Cora Gobbin. I live in East Long Meadow. I have 2 children who go to East Long Meadow. I'm a swim coach for the Marlins, and I've done swimming lessons for the town, and I'm lifeguarding for the town, so my life is all about children and water. So, with the pool, where it sits currently is in the building and only accessible through the building. So if the community wants to use the pool, the only time you can use the pool is when school is not in session. So if you look at the outline of the buildings here, the picture on the bottom left would be what the front of the school would look like, and the very left-hand side is the pool building section. And if you look over here on the right, the yellow outline is what it would look like attached to the school. So right now we have a 4-lane pool, and we have one of the biggest swim teams in the area, so to accommodate over 100 children in 4 lanes is not very accommodable. So we're upgrading to a 6-lane pool. I think as Gordon already said, the nice thing about this is it's actually a separate building. So during the day, the whole community could access the pool, and that is the plan with the rec department to have it open so that during the day there could be swimming lessons, there could be open swim, there could be aqua aerobics or aqua zumba or whatever. But then it would still be used by the high school when they have swim team practice, or by the Marlins when we have our own swim team practices. So that's kind of the biggest thing, is it has its own areas. We can also host larger meets, which in this area, there's always teams looking to host big meets. And when we go to our championship meet, we have to rent the Long Meadow pool for about $12,000. So there's definitely potential to make some money back by renting out the pool at times. I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is kind of what the pool is hopefully going to look like on the inside. So on the left-hand side is the layout. In the bottom left, you're going to come into a double-door entry with a little lobby area. There's going to be a pool office where you will check in. There are restrooms located on the outside, but then going into the pool area, there is a women's locker room, there's a men's locker room, and there's also going to be a family or like an more open changing locker room for people who might need more accessibility or they have a lot of kids and they need more space. Then in the pool area, what's really different about this pool compared to the pool we have now, it's shallower, which makes it more accessible for swimming lessons or for people who are working out, like walking in the pool and stuff like that. And also we have on the bottom right this stair area, which we do not have access to the stairs in our current pool. You have to get in for a ladder, which is not common with anybody. So again, for swimming lessons and for anybody who has a really bad knee, so having stairs to get to the pool would be awesome. So it's really makes it a community-based pool for everybody. And the committee worked really hard to make it so that it's not just a high school pool, that we can make sure that everybody gets to use it.
Okay, we're just about rounding up. Voting, it's coming up November 7th. Our final public forum will be October 19th, so we'll have one more chance to do this. We'll give tours again. If anybody wants to come and see those tours, certainly worthwhile to see what we have now. Again, the 7th of November is the vote. There is no school on the 7th of November for our students, so if your students are home, you should go vote that day because that's the day to go vote, okay? If the project passes, that vote's at person like every other time, and that's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If the project passes, construction will start fall of 24. Pretty exciting. Move in September of 26, so 3 years from now. So we can look back at that chart of where your students are now and when they would get into the building. 3 years we'd be in the building, and then one more year to complete the project fall of 27. So, if you all do me a favor, if you just all have your phones out, if you want to put November 7th in, Maryland, for your vote, I would greatly appreciate that. You could show up in person then and take your choice. On the ballot will be two questions, one for the school, the second for the pool. And if you do me a favor while you're in the phones right now too, if you go on November 6th, send out a text to a bunch of your friends to go vote the next day, please, because we need as many people to show up as possible for the vote. It's important to hear from the people of this town. And this is an important investment that we're going to make. So, with that being said, we'll have a chance to ask questions at the very end. But certainly want to thank everybody for coming out today. Certainly your interest is important to us. This is being videoed on LCAT and will be up and available shortly for the rest of the community. So, again, hopeful that people participate in voting on November 7th. And if anybody has questions, we can hand around the mic and see if we can answer for you. Okay?
No, right there. Greg.
Up to the mic.
They can come up to the mic. Greg. Yeah.
Or you can come to the mic.
They will come to the mic.
They will. This amendment says you must come to the mic.
Got it.
Will.
Back he has spoken. Is it on? Hold on.
She could probably use this one, though.
You can switch them up. Switch them up. Switch them up, Greg.
Marilyn Dean, I lived in town 47 years. I retired from a real estate career last year, 41 years in real estate. I have sold many houses in East Long Meadow to out-of-town buyers. Never was I asked how old the school was. I was asked test scores, graduation rates, how many college admissions, how many Ivy League college admissions. East Long Meadow shines. I mean, I applaud our teachers, our staff, they shine. My daughter went kindergarten to 12th grade, got an excellent education. I went to high school, it was built in the 20s. I graduated in 1966. The school is still operating. I know there's a lot wrong with the school. I agree we need a new high school. But I am so worried about seniors on a fixed income. How you talk about building costs going up, costs for everyone going up, and how are our seniors on a fixed income going to be able to substantiate this? I'm really worried for it. And I do think, because seniors can't, some of them can't go online, they can't get to a meeting. I'm sure half the seniors didn't know there were 5 meetings. I didn't know there were 5 meetings. Some people in town don't even know we're getting a new high school or it's on the table. And I just want to point out, as far as obsolescence, there are people in here, we are the only town, surrounding town, that does not have a new senior center. Long Meadow, over in Camden, has a new senior center. Our senior center was Pleasant View School, which was built in 1916. People in here mention that school. It is a beautiful building. It's been maintained. I can't believe the shape of this building. So do we need a high school? Yes. Do we need this high school? I think we need something that town can afford. Long Meadow built 10 years ago. Their high school, I know it's 10 years ago, and I know everything's escalated. I know new construction. That high school cost $78 million. The town was responsible for $44 million. I know cost increase, but we're looking at $100 million more. So, and I would like to see every taxpayer get a letter explaining what a debt exclusion is and explaining the implications to their taxes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Ralph Page, I'm the town council president, and I just wanted to extend as far as the vote. The vote's not just November 7th. We actually have early voting for the week prior to it, in-person early voting, which will be held in the library from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, and the Saturday before, I believe it's October 28th. In-person early voting will also occur in the library. So if you can't make it on the 7th, but you can make it the week earlier, come out and vote. The most important thing is to let your voice be heard, whether before the school, whether you're against the school. No one's going to know unless you come out and vote. So I would encourage everyone to step up and do their part by voting. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Phil LaRosa. I'm curious, can anybody at either one of the desks here confirm that these prices will hold from today through occupation? What's the chances it's going to go up? I also am a senior and I'm a fixed income. And our kids, my wife's kids went through the school. We went through the school. And it's just tough on seniors to say, hey, we're going to support this. We have, our grandkids are finishing up, as a matter of fact. We have no investment in this, and we're a fixed income, and God knows, and I think everybody here would agree, our taxes keep going up and up and up. We have new employees in town, it costs us more. We're talking about buying a new building, the new town hall building. It's bizarre. It's a new tax. A lot of fixed income seniors that have no more disposable income. So my question, again, I'm getting off the subject, but my question is, can anybody here guarantee these are the costs and going to end up with the cost? As you all know, construction always has an escalator in there somewhere, something unseen. But with that said, how the potential is, how many more millions is the potential? It's a 3-year window. A lot of stuff can happen. Material costs, labor costs, so on and so forth. Thank you.
Bill, I'll take a crack at it, I think, and Corey, correct me if I'm wrong. So the 177 is a set budget, we agreed to make that a finalized budget. The committee worked very hard to get that number down, we cut things, one of the things we cut was Right, so what I'm getting at is the final number, 177 is the final top number, and that number will not go higher. What will happen is, we have projections for cost increases over the next 3 years. We have 2 estimators do those projections for us, so the best projection is those costs will be what the costs are. If they are not, then it will be this committee's job to start funding things to get us to that 177.
Well, when you start funding, do you use the state fund?
No.
How do you know? You don't
We're not gonna cut, we won't,
You're not sure when you're gonna cut for it.
no, you're right, we're not sure we're gonna cut, but it will be this, committee's job to budget at 177, I'm telling you that's what we're gonna do. I mean, if it comes in and it's 250, we'll have to shut it down, I would imagine, but Dory, that's not gonna happen.
Or our seniors will be moving out.
So since the MSBA has been in operation since 2008, there's an incredibly good track record of accuracy. What's different between the Massachusetts School Building Authority and the school building authority that existed prior? Previously, there was no real oversight. It was a grant, it was often, you got paid after you finished the project, it was kind of financially very challenging for towns, there was no oversight. Things have really improved, and the track record for being on budget on MSBA projects is very good because of the level of oversight, the requirement for 2 estimates, the requirement that we, when estimating, include the escalation cost per year for construction. So this cost is not today's cost, it's actually midpoint of construction. It includes contingency. This project is a construction manager at risk project by choice of the school building committee. So there's both a builder's contingency built in as well as an owner's contingency. So if the town decides that they change their mind on the design, they have some means to do that. It's always really important that this be a fully complete number because you're voting on it, and there's no plan ever to come back. In the last few years, during this crazy period where inflation rose really dramatically, there were a few towns that got in a hole, very unexpected, very unusual, not really consistent with MSBA history of projects at all. And the MSBA got support from the legislature to support those projects. Escalation has gone down back to somewhat normal means. We're around 7 to 8% a year in escalation costs right now. And that has been anticipated in this project fully. So I don't foresee that as being a problem at all.
Lesson learned, just give them like the Dory. Anybody else tonight? Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Marty Kitty. I've lived here in town since 1982. And a point to consider that wasn't mentioned that I think is a factor is that around all of us in this room, I assume, pay state taxes. And a portion of our state taxes is where that 63 million came from. And if we say no to this project, some other town is going to get it, and you're going to still be paying the state taxes. So might as well be us. You're going to pay one way or the other, whether you like it or not. And then I got a second follow-up question. When they tear this building down, there's a lot of value, like the copper plumbing and the boiler's not that old. Can some of that, could we get a couple $100,000 from just getting rid of the, instead of just taking it to the dump, selling off some of the stuff that's still good? That's my second part. The taxes I wanted to make.
I don't mean to grab. Thank you so much, appreciate that.
Ben might have another answer to this, but I'll say that in general, when these projects go into construction and the subcontractors are bidding for different parts of it, the demo team typically is giving a number, and they're often doing some level of salvage and selling, so their numbers actually kind of builds in some of that. The district also has the potential to do salvage of its own prior to that, so there's kind of a process where we stop and look around and talk about, what do we want to hold on to, what is memorialized in the school, what do we want to keep in the school. There's always things that are important to the community that they want to salvage and retain, and then there's some things of value that can be salvaged and retained. So that becomes a part of the process. But I'd say it's also really true that things like Hopper kind of end up actually showing up by virtue of the low number you're getting from the demo contractor, because they're going to sell some of those very difficult to get at things.
So based on the numbers you showed us up there, and a little quick math, it looks looks like our tax increase just from the school is gonna be 18.2%. And that's if everything goes correct. Is that an accurate number based on what you have up there? It's division. Is that the number?
Yep.
Yes? Okay. And then we've got our 2.5 on top of that, correct? So we're gonna be looking at like a 21% increase in taxes every year, and that's if nothing goes wrong. Correct?
Well, we don't always tax to the levy, so I can't speak to the 2.5, but your math is correct, yeah.
Yeah, it's 18, well, they've already told us to expect. And you put numbers up there like base repair, and it comes out to what it's gonna cost us in theory for the new school. But on other things, you call it code upgrade. And, you know, for people like me who don't understand most of this, a repair is like if the faucet's leaking, I've gotta fix the faucet. If I'm doing some sort of an upgrade that we decide we're gonna listen to that woman Christine and put in a new bathroom, it's a whole different thing. And it makes it look like we've got $110 million worth of repairs in front of us. And no one can tell us when those repairs are gonna come. They're not all gonna come this year, or probably in the next 5 years. So it's kind of, in my opinion, a little disingenuous when you put that number up there and make it look like, well, we can have a new school, or we can keep the old broken down school, and the cost is gonna be the same. And at the beginning of this, we were led to believe that the state was gonna pay like 55%. And now, based on the numbers up there, the state's down to about 32% reimbursement, if I looked at those numbers correctly. And I guess another question I have is on one of those slides, you showed us getting $55 million reimbursed. And then when you showed the final one, it was $63 million. Has that, and is that a firm number? Are they gonna actually, has that been committed to?
Yes.
It has, the 63 million.
It's about $50,000 higher than the number we showed you. There was a.
Can I move?
Good Lord.
So we try to be very conservative throughout this process and not overpromise. First off, the reimbursement rate that is determined for every community is based on an indexed number of your rate of poverty, your income level, et cetera. So that's how that determination of 56.7% reimbursement is established prior to the project beginning. That number is 56.7% of eligible costs. Eligible does not include the full cost of construction. So if the cost of construction is, $750 per square foot, their eligible is only $393 per square foot. So they're only paying 56.7% of that $393 per square foot. So they're obviously already well below the 56.7% reimbursement. That's there from the beginning of the project, automatically for every district. There's nothing unique, there's nothing different about that. There are a lot of other individual things that are capped throughout the project from eligibility as well. Site costs are capped at 8%. There are costs on designer fees. There are costs. There's caps on legal fees. There's caps on printing fees. I mean, there are a whole bunch of little tiny things that all add up that they kind of, to some degree, constrain. Again, their grant is primarily dedicated to educational spaces. That's where they kind of want to go. It's not a program that everyone is entitled to. It's a competitive grant program, and we're trying to spread the state's money that we all pay into around as many communities as possible. So that's why they have those rules in place. The first slide we showed you, I explained was during feasibility at the very beginning. So when we were comparing the 4 different options, that was our early conservative projection. The last slide we showed you, let me go back to that just to have that here, because it's the one that is the final, just about. Here. So these numbers are based on the final cost estimates. Today we had a final reconciliation call with the MSBA in which they confirmed, because it's a funny process. We're trying to anticipate how the math will play out. We were accurate with about $50,000, and the $50,000 is in your favor. So these numbers are actually going to be tiny bit, but fractionally better. And the MSBA is committed to that scope of budget today. If something radical changes, they'll audit the whole project to see. So if, suddenly the gym went away, they would notice, but there's no real expectation that anything of that consequence is going to change. But they do audit the project as it goes through. And they commission the project after it's through budget, which is actually something to mention. So again, old school building authority, a little bit of a Wild West program, new school building authority, they're invested in these schools lasting. So when the school is complete, there's a ninth module where for that year after the school is complete, the MSBA is paying consulting team to verify that all these building systems are actually working. So that there's no problem. Like you may have heard about the light problem at was it Wilbraham? At Minnetonka. So that's the MSBA has now committed to a process of ensuring that all the mechanical systems are performing as designed.
Good.
This one. Yeah, basic repair. So these are real costs. On an annual basis, I've done this school committee now 15 years in general. And different years and others, we spend about $1.5 million on capital investments on an annual basis per town, town-wide. Very few of these would fit inside of $1.5 million, and really, if you look at the school side, you're looking at $750,000. So that would mean that any of these would have to go back out for debt exclusion. And which one? Where do we start? Which one do we start at? Where?
General conditions.
Okay. So my point is though, these are real costs, and they're today's costs at $98,000. So yeah, they're not going to be the same numbers. You're right. They're going to go up. And so if we do the roof in 3 years, right? $5.5 million. That'll have to go out for a debt exclusion. That'll have to go out for a vote. Any of these things. And so my point being is, you have a chance to get some reimbursement from the state. This is our one opportunity. Or we have a chance to try to pick away at that. And the $98 million, as I said, we spend about 1.5 a year. How many years is that going to take? At 1.5, we're never going to do it. This is our shot. I know it's a lot of money. We've done our very best to keep the dollar figure to where we can best do good by the town. Okay? So, pass it up around.
Greg, before you go there. I'm sorry.
But if I heard someone asking about general conditions or any of
Well, I'm
these
asking
items,
what it's almost as if somebody had to make that number add up to what a new school would cost, and I'm sorry.
that's a whole thing.
What are we demolishing if we're keeping the school? This is, if we keep the school, we're demolishing $3 million. We've got a special construction
If you look
of
above,
$500,000.
if you look above your head, Mr. Levine, you see the ceiling, right?
But exterior disclosure, $10 million. These are all things that on buildings that, like this, that people aren't doing right now. I just don't. I understand we're gonna need a roof, and we want our kids to be in a great school, but the average school, I looked up in Boston, it's 80 years old, the average school. I do not buy into that. A 60-year-old building, or 62 years old, whatever it is at the end of its useful life. I don't buy into it. I understand that systems are getting old, they're gonna have to be updated or replaced, but it's like every other building in this area, places like Bay State Medical, like Smith & Wesson, or Mass Mutual, all have buildings that are that old and much older. I don't understand how this is the only one that when you say that the structure itself is good, and by your own people has been characterized as having fantastic bones, that we don't have a great school to work with, and repair what needs to be repaired. And
And we can't really debate this all night, as much as I'd like to. But I would offer, if the structure that we're looking at, right, there's columns in the back of the room, if the structure is sound, but the ceilings are simply too low to allow for ductwork to be installed, then the good bones aren't helping. They're not helping the objective, which is to develop a building which meets modern day criteria. So that's it's like if you go into an old house and you have 7-foot ceilings, yeah, you can still live there, but you're not gonna be able to get the rent you could get from a modern home.
people don't, you say, if we live in I mean, you're kind of like saying that if I look at my house and I say in the next 20 years, I'm gonna need at least one furnace, one roof, 2 air conditioners, whatever. And I add it all up and it comes up to $500,000. And I say to my wife, we can get it rebuilt for $400,000, let's tear it down. I mean, I don't understand. I would think we could be creative. And so that a lot of people in this town are gonna either be very hurt by a 21% tax increase, or they're not gonna be able to survive it, and they're gonna have to move elsewhere. And they're really gonna be jammed up because nobody's moving right now because they've all got a 3.5% or 4% mortgage. And I looked it up today, the average 30-year mortgage right now is 7.5%. So they can't move. I mean, what are they gonna do? Don't worry about that.
We hear your answer.
I'm Tim Merrill. I have 2 questions about education.
Can you hold that up closer, please? Thank you.
I'm Tim Merrill. I have 2 questions about education. We're talking about building a high school that's going to educate kids. And there was mention in a slide about the accreditation of the school system and of the high school. I'm curious about how seriously you take that. What are the consequences of a challenge to accreditation? That's question number 1. Question number 2, we're talking about how excellent the teaching staff and administrative staff is at the high school, and they are across the board. What happens when the school isn't built? Have you heard any discussion from staff or teachers about their commitment to East Long Meadow and the excellence of East Long Meadow's education, culture? Will we lose people? Those are my 2 questions.
So the first question on accreditation. So currently, East Long Meadow High School is on warning for the community resources, which basically is what the community puts forth to the building. That was, we were placed on warning back 2014, right? 2015. And then during that accreditation process, after they come, they visit, they basically take 3 days to go through all of your coursework, your course catalog, look at the building, look at the resources, look how things are being deployed on a daily basis. They give you a rating. At that time for human resources, we were rated, or we were placed on warning status. Since that time, we have put in updates to them last 2 times, right?
Yeah, I actually
Progress
about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so we just delivered a progress report 2 weeks ago, and 2 years prior to that, we gave another progress report. Even though we have made additions, we have increased technology, we've gone to a 1-to-1 program, and we've made a lot of good inroads for our students, we are still on warning status. So what does that mean in the long term? What it could mean is that when families are looking to move in town and they hear that your high school is on warning status or has lost accreditation, then that may be an easy choice for them to not move into East Long Meadow. It also could mean that it can start to hurt. Someone was talking about admissions process. It can hurt the admissions process as students are looking at Ivy League schools, NSTAC schools, and some of the top schools in the country. If admissions programs see or hear that the educational program is no longer accredited, it can hurt that process. And so it can be a detrimental effect on our students. In terms of staff, we have an incredible retention rate in East Long Meadow. But I will say that days like today, morale takes a hit. So I can't predict the future, but certainly when towns around us are building and Long Meadow's back in the MSA process for their middle school right now, they're looking to do a project where they possibly combine their 2 middle schools. That has a draw. It's hard to recruit staff right now. Most school systems you hear are right now still looking to fill positions. You hear Chicopee advertising all the time. If you watch the local news, there's usually a Chicopee ad. Springfield Public Schools are also advertising. And so when communities are building, that's a draw.
Take a students talk about education because at this stage of the game, people don't often ask questions about that, and it's a great thing you did. So we don't spend as much time talking about that plan as I'd like to, but since you opened the door, we'll take advantage of that opportunity. So I'm the educational facilities planner for the project, and a lot of that involves many, many hours meeting with the faculty, talking about what their experiences are, how they like to teach, how they would teach if they could. And what we often notice in these processes is that people, in the same way the district's administration and Frank and his team are always kind of dealing with the building as an issue, the teachers are as well, but they often don't realize the degree to which it's affecting their teaching. So what we find is these experiences can be very transformative with education in a way that people cannot see at this stage, and there's not much we can do except hope that they get to the point where they will see it. But I would like to talk about some of the things that I think are really unique to this project that we heard from the district and the faculty that we've then designed and responded to. So you heard a lot about the arts wing as one, how we've got this 4-wing concept. And this art wing is unique in that it brings the arts together. One big thing we noticed and observed is that while there's an amazing culture of teaching here, and there really is a very strong relation between students and teachers, there's a sense of isolation sometimes, that you have the art teachers are over here, the resources that they'd like to work with are not exactly nearby. The music program is elsewhere in the school. So there's definitely a desire for there to be more collaboration and more opportunities for that. So we tried to think about that. So we have this arts wing that really reinvests in that and ties to a new auditorium. This auditorium is large, but it's just large. You know, there's a lot of things that are lacking in it. So creating a space that's more multifunctional was one of the goals. So the arts wing is going to be very exciting. What we heard a lot about from faculty and students and parents is that students need to be learning and preparing for future jobs. That there's an opportunity for learning today to be more than just sitting in the classroom, but to have other types of learning spaces. So we've actually intentionally tried to place some of these purple hands-on studios that are based on certain programs in the school more to the center. Those are spaces that are more enriched with more resources. So a graphics design lab, a video lab, a culinary lab, a STEM engineering lab that have resources that all teachers can use that allow for more space for project-based learning, that are more active spaces, and that they're sort of centralized in a way that are shown off. So that there's an ability for everybody to make use of those spaces. So those are some of the things that are really important. Creating teacher planning spaces actually is a really important thing. It's not a lot of square footage, but it makes a difference. There is no teacher planning room in the school currently. There are really no conference rooms. There was one, but it's been repurposed for something else. So to create spaces where people can actually get together and talk about what they're doing and work together, that's a part of 21st century teaching. You know, and we think that will experience and impact learning as well. We took a lot of cues from the school as it exists. So there was a lot of conversation about how COVID, people started to use the outdoors again. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a connection? Courtyards are very challenging in the long run. So instead we've created these spaces that allow for outdoor learning and provide some resources there. So we have Wi-Fi, we have shade, we have seating areas so that students can get outside to learn. Really helps for the diversity of students and types of students and how they learn best. So a lot of the thinking that we're trying to place in schools today comes from knowledge we have about how children learn, how they learn best, what variety of learning techniques there are. And when you think about it, those of us who went to schools built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, yes, we did well. Some people did not do well in those environments as well. So schools are populated with a larger diversity of students today who have greater needs, and the potential to serve those needs is there in the school.
I have to say I certainly appreciate these meetings, but I don't realistically know how many people in town
have actually heard them or will hear them. And it seems like every time in town or in the state, when we have a ballot question, there's always an informational piece that goes out. I mean, we even have it on a freaking bottle bill. I don't know why there cannot be an informational piece put out to the town about what a yes vote would mean and what a no vote would mean. I think the people in the town deserve to have those questions answered.
Get a mailer, send a mailer out, the mailer said, you suggest something.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Ferris. Some of you might know who I am, some of you may not. I am the chairperson of the Citizens for East Long Meadow High School, also known as Vote Yes ELHS. I'm a transplant. I did not grow up here. I don't have family here. I moved here in the fall of 2020 from the St. Louis area, not knowing anything about New England, having never been here. My husband went to school here, and we moved here because of that. To your point, ma'am, had I known what this school looked like and the condition that it was in, I would have not moved here. But now that I'm here, I have decided to be an agent of change and plan for the future of not only my children who are in 6th grade, but for the future of all of the students in East Long Meadow. Whether or not my husband and I can afford to pay the taxes when they go up is a very personal decision, but that will not impact how I vote. I will be voting yes regardless, because my ability to pay should not be to the detriment of the students who have to learn in this school, the teachers who have to teach in this school. It is our responsibility as voters to look and plan for the future of the people in this community.
Hello, I'm Vivian Morse, and I taught at Long Meadow High School, and I went through the years when they went through this. And a couple things I just want to mention is, just like here, wonderful staff, we were not getting good ratings, and we would do little things like change windows and things like that, but it still did not bring us up to what we needed as a town for the value of the houses within that town. The real estate values need to stay up. I look here and I don't see many 40 and 50-year-olds. I don't see many 30-year-olds. It's important that when we vote for the future. That this is really important for you and your community. And I know, I'm a retiree. I have a fixed income. But I know how important education is. And I know how important our future is. And real estate values, for many of us, is the only thing we've had that really is solidified for us. And if we have a school and we don't get transplants in, and we don't get people, coming here to live here and share in our wonderful community, that's our future, and we want our future to be progressive. And having a school that fits the intelligence of our staff and the intelligence of our students is very, very futuristic.
I don't get this later. My question is more or less to a revenue standpoint, not so much against the cost estimates and the physical items of the building itself. But my question is this: you have a commitment of $63 million from the state, which is low. We all know that. My question is really on that particular item. There's talk of the state funding more towards building schools in the near future. If the state was to increase their allocation for funding into the school MSBA, would we be able to participate in a higher percentage that the MSBA may have in the next 2 or 3 years?
Is it a firm commitment or is it an open commitment that we may participate throughout our building phase?
So I've been working on MSBA projects for over 10 years now, and this is a project issue that comes up all the time, that districts start to have to face this vote and start thinking, can we lobby to get more? Can we wait and see if it goes up? The MSBA is extremely slow to change, and it's the fact that legislators are talking about more money going into schools has been consistent, and it is, the volume is raising, and I hope it continues to raise, because I do think that we have a really dire situation across the board. We have 2,800 schools in Massachusetts. Many of them are in the same shape as this school. And there are many districts that want to address their schools and are struggling because they don't have the tax base to do it. So this is an uncommon situation. But it is very slow moving to make any legislative change. I know I work really hard on legislative issues, and it does not happen. The SBA's reimbursement rate creeps up, as you saw. Even if they made a jump, it wouldn't apply to this project, and the odds are, since they just made a jump, they are going to make another jump for another 2 years. 2 years would be unusual, so it's very unlikely, unfortunately. I wish I could say otherwise. Also, the MSBA in 2008 was making 16 schools and funding 16 schools at a time. That number's dropped to about 10 currently. So the trend is not actually in a positive direction at the moment. And for it to radically change, there has to be a really major change on the part of the legislature, and the MSBA has to size up to be able to handle it. And they have to change a lot of the specific rules in the legislation. And that's very unlikely to happen within, say, 2 years. It's a very slow train for that to begin to happen. And other districts that have kind of got into this in their minds that maybe they can hold out, often if you walk away from a project, as we've talked about, it's 5 to 7 years to get back in. And by then, all those costs have gone up. So you don't end up helping yourself as much as it seems like you might. So it's very dangerous to hold out and hope, I think.
My question wasn't so much about hoping for it, but my question is, if the MSBA does increase,
No, right.
participate in increase.
Right, so Ben, that's decided.
Yeah, so just from the systematic level of how MSBA's process works, and unless something changes with how they initiate all the funding, right now we've submitted our schematic design budget, our documents to the Mass School Building Authority. That is now under review by them. They have a board of directors meeting on October 25th where they will be establishing a project scope and budget agreement. Essentially, once that is set in place, you're locked in. So historically, there have been other, if a project locks in at that date, and then, the following year, the MSBA does increase its reimbursement. Those projects that had already locked into their project scope and budget agreement, which we're targeting for October 25th, they don't benefit from those additional reimbursements.
I think a couple numbers, Dory, you mentioned 2,800 schools in Massachusetts, 10 per year in MSBA. So the cycle will be 280 years if you want to go through the whole process of every school. It's reasonable though, so this is our shot. It just reinforces the point that we've applied 7 years in a row, we've accepted 10 buildings out of the whole state of Massachusetts, and we are one of them. If we don't take it now, the $63 million will not be here anymore, and we'll have to get back in line. I know we stated that, but it's a very important point. 10 projects per year, we're one of them, so it makes it 7 years not seem that long, actually, that we have those. Although it's helpful.
The actual size of the new school doesn't seem to be much different than the old. What is the school population that this new school targets?
So when we started this process, they did out a 10-year projection in terms of what our population has been and what our population is and what our population potentially could be. And and we've been pretty consistently around 800 students, where we have pretty consistently around 200 students per class. So the new building is more efficient in terms of the space that it's using. So just so people understand that, it is not, necessarily more. There are less classrooms in there, so the classrooms are more utilized consistently throughout the day. They target 80% usage throughout the school day, where right now, when teachers have prep time, right now those classrooms are not being used. So we have less classroom space to make it a more efficient building.
My name is Paul Davidovici. I had a question relative to the base repair slide. My question is, are portable classrooms part of that estimate?
No.
So for those of you who don't know, if you're going, this building, in my opinion, is beyond fix it. This building needs to either replace it or you repair it. And when you repair it, you have to do something with your students. So, Mr. Smith will go out and try to lease between 5 to 10 portable classrooms, connect them to this building, and that cost will be somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 to $10 million, and you will not get any of that money back. It's just a complete waste of money. But having said that, you're going to at least for 3 years disrupt the education of the 800 students who go to school here, because you'll have construction workers in this building on a tiered basis of construction to fix a heat system that does not adequately work now, an air handling system to provide fresh air that does not adequately work now. In the words of my grandson, who's a junior, Papa, you should have been in the building 2 weeks ago when it was 90-something degrees. You don't have an electrical system that can handle the needs of today's classrooms, because the classrooms that when I graduated from technical high school in 1966 are nowhere near what the classrooms of today are. I'm an old guy, but I still work. And to let you guys know, or people know, I'm an educator. I've been an educator since 1970, and I still work. And last year I was the superintendent of schools in Somers, Connecticut. I walked into classrooms and didn't recognize what was going on in the classrooms of today. And I've only been retired from hand over hand since 2009, and I was a part-time superintendent in a small district and retired in 2017. And in those 5 years, the change in classrooms was incredible. We don't have a robust internet system in this building that supports the education of these kids. So either we put all that in and go through a 4 to 5 year cycle of the cost of what you saw on the slide, or we build a new school and we take care of the health and safety of the students who are going to attend the school. That's our obligation. Somebody paid for me to go into a school at some point in their lives, and it's my responsibility to pay it forward.
Get the steps in today. You're the boss.
I'm not the boss.
My name is Mike Vicente, and I was born 63 years ago today on Elm Street. And where's the other lady from the Long Meadow teacher? I'm probably a little younger than her. But anyway, what Marilyn said to start this thing off was very interesting, and I agree with her, what she said. But I had a couple of questions for you. First of all, this is a comment. What's going to happen with that existing football field? New, old, stays? What's going to happen with that? Stays, okay. So in March, February, I had to start losing some weight. So I would go out to that track 3 or 4 times a week and go good weather to walk around it. And I just noticed that field there is in really horrendous condition. I don't know what the maintenance schedule is for that. I don't know how it's maintained, but I know that there's a similar one up at the University of Massachusetts. Same age vintage, which is in pristine condition and is used by 4 or 5 teams every day. So maintaining what you have is the most important thing. And $1 million to take care of every building in this town just isn't enough. And it's also, maintenance. So now I'm going to go to my next question, which was, we just talked about
Can I just answer the field
Sure, go ahead.
piece? Yeah, so, that field is.
Go right ahead.
I got one.
Oh, sure.
Thanks for wait till you get over here. So,
Just look.
So that field is 12 years old. Typically the lifespan of those fields is right around 10 fields before they need to be replaced. We do maintain that field through a grooming system. It's actually scheduled to be groomed, I believe, first week in October, which is done by a machine that DPW uses. So it is something that we do take care of. The track was just replaced last year. But we are getting towards the end of the life expectancy of what they project out for that field. I don't know what the projected cost would be to replace that, but.
So just, I don't want to belabor this, but there's weeds growing up through the track, number one. Number two, all the rubberized pellets that are supposed to be spread around on that field are all in that gutter system that's around it, okay? Forget the maintenance, okay? It's gone. It's never going to be returned. But let's go back to the program. So Maryland spent 40 years in the real estate industry selling houses in Long Meadow, East Long Meadow, Wilbraham, Hamden, all over Western Massachusetts. And I know that by looking at all the people in this room, there are a lot of people here who are older than me. Yeah. There are a lot of people that are older than me. So what happens when all of the people start deciding they have to go to the assisted living or to the nursing home, or the children say, we gotta sell mom and dad's house? Who's gonna backfill that house? Another senior citizen or a young family with new children? So my fear is that your programming, the 7 Ps in the Navy may have to come into effect here, because you may have a student population in the high school sometime in the next 20 years that's going to be well over 800 students in this building. And then you're going to have to go spend your $8 million on your porta classrooms to put it outside the back. That's my question about the programming. Now I want to go to Mr. Skansky here. Sir. Sir. I don't know your name. Ben. So Ben, and the Massachusetts school building lady at the end. So what I heard was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I probably am, the state allows $400 a square foot. It's 370 something now, $400 a square foot. 393, okay. I don't remember what the actual total square footage was on this new building. 150? 191, okay. So that's going to bring us down somewhere between $700 and $800 a square foot? Okay, great, so we're at it was $300, almost 75% more than what the state allows. Now, the state's in the school building business. So I guess my question, and just so you know, I have a long background in large construction projects. And I've worked with Skanska out in a big project in Seattle, and I found the company to be very good. So my question to you is, if the state says $400, $393, whatever, if you shrunk the footprint of that building and went up one more floor to 3 floors, and I know what it costs to put an extra elevator stop in, you gotta put elevators in there anyway, could you get your number closer, or could you get it down and maybe cover at least the cost of the swimming pool? And lastly, Can you build a school building in the state of Massachusetts for $400 a square foot?
So I'll start with an answer to your second question. No. The answer is no. You cannot build a school for $400 a square foot in this current market in this state. It's just not possible. I think the state, the Mass School Building Authority, would be the first to tell you that their reimbursement on construction costs is not up to par. We show the graph. It's almost double where we're at versus what they're willing to contribute. So they're very candid about that, but they also, to Dory's point, have school projects across the district that they have to go about this on an equitable basis, and they need to draw a line in the sand somewhere. And so as far as today, that is what they are willing to contribute. So to answer your question, no, you cannot build a school for that cost. And
Going up, shrink the footprint, go up another floor. I'm looking at that plan right there, and the school committee man said that all of the classrooms, someone else said they were all facing south. You did, I'm sorry. Someone said. So you get the natural light into the building, but I'm looking at all those green rooms, and half of them face south and half of them face north.
Exactly, he's not an architect, so he meant to say south and north. North light is great for teaching, south light's great for teaching. East and west, not so great, because you get glare directly in your eyes, so that's the thinking behind that. We did talk about the 3-story building, actually,
Springfield has a beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, there are projects where the site really demands it. I don't think you can achieve the same thing. What we talked about when we talked about that is this community uses these community spaces a lot, and they're big spaces that you're not going to juggle. So the arts wing, the auditorium, and the gym, and then you have the loading dock and the cafeteria. That's all heavy first-story program. So the stuff that's easiest to staff are the classrooms, frankly, and that's not as much of the building. They're already stacked, stacking them into smaller. We weren't going to achieve as much benefit out of that idea. We did talk about it and look at it. The downsides of that, there's some savings, but you're still seeing volume of exterior area, masonry, etc. So that's all there. Smaller roofs, smaller foundations. So those are the advantages, and they were some. But there are other disadvantages that, given the context of this site, it was agreed that it really wasn't going to be as beneficial.
So you're going to put a big solar array on the roof. Are you going to use geothermal at all for the pool?
We had explored geothermal. We priced out geothermal for the school, not for the pool, because the pool, we're trying to keep the pool as cost effective as possible because it doesn't have any ramp support. Obviously it's a lot to ask here. Geothermal was something that we have explored with our team. It's definitely, what was the delta was,
I don't know.
I can look at how much is that?
10 million.
10 million more.
10 million more for geothermal?
For geothermal. There are credits, but they're just not there yet, so it's been really a problem. And knowing how hard this decision was going to be, the decision was made to stick with the all electric and the PV rather than geothermal, which would have pushed us up even farther.
Last week, did you separate the electric for the pool and the school building?
Separated? Yes, they are separated.
That's it, we're done? No, Jerry. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'll cut them.
I'll point the question at I guess today's the high school is one of the pieces of the future of the community. There's a lot of facets to it.
Jerry, speak up to school.
I'm sorry. 9 years old. No, I said that, the new high school is one of the facets of the future of the community. One of the new pieces of the community, and one of the facets is the cost. And we're talking about 2 debt students that are going to last 20 to 30 years, 25 years, 30 years. I guess some of the other questions I have, the schools themselves, since we have administrators and school committee people have been on board for 15 plus years. What's happening with the other schools? What about Mountain View? that's had modulars for 15 years. You talked about modulars. You've had them in Mountain View for 15 years. What's the plan for Mountain View? There's been talk, Ray, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Is there a plan to combine that and go for another $250 million school project? The town needs to know that. What other capital projects are coming down the pike for not only the other school, but the town? You know, what's the cost of this? I understand the cost and the need to educate the students. We spend, and Gordon, correct me if I'm wrong, we're probably around $18,000 a year per student right now to educate them, which is even more than private school. If you go to Cathedral, it's about 15 grand right now a year.
I think we're actually closer to 14 to 16,000, but the state per pupil average might be around 18. We're below the state.
And I guess the other question would be is, for the town, what's the future capital cost? What's gonna happen in the next 5 or 10 years with the towns? It's great to do the exclusion, because you get to keep it below the $25 a thousand. But what's gonna happen? What are we gonna do with town roads? I mean, there's other projects in town that have to happen. So that, I'm throwing it out to everyone. Building, Greg, Gordon, and also
we have no argument that there are many capital projects that are needed in town.
Why don't you go to Mountain View? You got modulars there for 15 years.
Correct, so the Mountain View modular project actually was one that was approved to talk about something that we talked about earlier in the presentation, where how long it takes for projects to actually come to fruition, go out to bid. That project 2 years ago was approved.
Well, again, it's not a matter of approving the modulars, but why do we have them? Why haven't we gone to Mountain View instead of high school? And what's the plan? Is there a plan, Greg, to combine 2 schools for a $250 million project? Because that's gonna be another 20% increase in the tax base.
No, there's no plan for that, Jerry. You know,
Hasn't been talked
so
about.
we've done a facility study.
Hasn't been talked about.
We've done a facility study now, 12 years ago,
2013.
10 years ago. And looked at all 5 buildings. We have needs at all 5 buildings. Burson Park being our newest at 23 years old. Looking to put a roof on that, portion of the roof on that. So we continue to invest in all the schools. We request, last year was $5 million in capital investment for the schools. So we have a list of projects. Now, of course, we can't fund them all because that would be in a large tax increase, and we're understanding that. But there are needs of all the buildings. The school committee, administration felt the high school was priority number 1. It's the flagship of the district. It certainly has its deficiencies. They're evident every week now, it seems like. We have something else going on in this building. So this is our priority for now, and it will be years before we look at the elementary schools. Unfortunately, yes, they need work, but we don't have plans to build any schools. Yeah.
I got another question. Yes, sir. The other question I have is, what's going to be the difference in the operating cost between the old school and the new school? What's the cost difference annually?
Yes. That's our energy cost now, 318.
I said operating cost. Not just energy. Costs more than just energy to run a school.
So the operating budget, is that what we're asking?
You're asking about the operating budget itself.
What's the difference?
Staff, is that what?
Staff.
So operating budget.
No, I'm just talking, other than people, the operating cost of the building. Maintenance,
We have
like-
the utilities costs and the power costs up here. I don't have all those numbers in.
and where is that slide?
Wait, you wanna see it?
Slide for that.
Which one?
The one that it's showing,
The last one?
the one that's up there right now.
These are subcommittee, we have had, how many meetings, so these are
37.
pulling up information from our previous meeting to share.
But again, where is that so the public can see it? Even the latest PSR isn't available to the public. Now, I was told it was gonna be available in the middle of August. That's what I was told at a meeting.
Yeah, there's a project website and.
It's not on there.
Preferred schematic report?
The latest PSR is not on the public website. Am I correct? Schematic design, maybe I'm in the wrong term.
Preferred
The
schematic
six
report.
hundred and fifty page document has not been updated on the website. Excuse me, that's.
Okay, yeah, done. Mr. Manning. The mic?
Been on the website since the beginning.
Yeah.
That document has been on the website since the beginning.
Don, you gave me the link, I agree, but I haven't seen an update.
It's not an updated report, because that was a submission to the MSBA in August. That document is done. That document contains all the estimates, right, that people asked about that support the number for the base repair code upgrade.
There's a macro version, yes, but there isn't the updated total.
It was
I'll
not
pass
updated.
that, I'll go past that.
We'll simply get it up. If it's not, we'll double check that it's in the project file. And if it's not, because it certainly.
It's right on the front page, Nora.
Huh?
Right on the front page of the website.
He's asking for the schematic design, which, this takes him to the PSR, not the SD. So,
Sorry.
yeah, I think that's
I'm
the
sorry.
concern. So the front page document should take to the schematic design, and I think that just needs to be updated. I think it's in here, it's probably buried, and you need to be able to link directly to it. So, yes, we'll take care of that.
My other question would be is, and this is for the school committee and the school, would you guys commit to a zero-based budgeting for at least 2 years to help offset the cost? That's the question is both for the school administrators and the school committee. Instead of doing the annual 2 or 3% every year, would you commit to a zero-based budgeting for at least 2 years to help offset these costs?
Jared, I think it's a appropriate question, relative question. I don't think any of us can answer that for you today. As we go through the budget process, we're not looking at everything. I think in conjunction with town council, as we move forward, yeah, would it be responsible to tighten things up for the next couple of years? Yes, I agree with you. Can I commit to a zero? No, zero means cuts to staff, and nobody's ready to make that commitment today. If it meant we got the school, then maybe we'd have to consider it. Would that get your vote?
Commit today,
I can't commit, Jared, I can't commit, but that's not fair.
Commit and I'll vote.
Fair.
And the other question is with LCAT. LCAT's got between $500,000 and $800,000 in the bank right now. They get funded from your cable subscription. Are they gonna pay for a portion of the space that they're gonna occupy?
Sure. There you go.
Like it.
Sure.
Just one last question. Has anybody considered that the market could change and housing values could go down, and we will not have the ability to pay when we reach 25%? What would happen? Because we've got 30 years of a bond. What would happen if housing dramatically changed? 41 years I've seen dramatic change. It's great right now if you're a seller, it's horrible if you're a buyer. What happens if the whole market goes upside down? What's gonna happen when the assessments go down and values go down, and how are we gonna pay for that?
You want me to turn?
Yeah.
So, the budget is what the budget is for the town, I would say that, and going forward, it would have to be a decision of the town to change the budget, so that your taxes I would say are not directly correlated. Stretch it. They are correlated to your assessed value, but the assessed, the tax burden would be the same.
How are you gonna pay
Based-
when you're not collecting enough taxes, when you're reaching through that bill?
Well, that's why this is beyond the 25, this is the debt exclusion. So once it's calculated, it will not be calculated further than 25%. That's correct.
Great.
Last question, I promise. The project is, according to your timelines, that the kids would be into a new school, 2027. But this school, 2026. But this school would then be demolished, so the project's not complete until this school is demolished and the new athletic fields are built, then the project, so that's another year. So then you go through the bonding process. So when do we consider, or when do we know that the actual cost that has been estimated and impact on our tax dollars, what quarter or what year do we think that's actually gonna happen? Because my guess, it won't be until at least 2028. Is that correct? So by the time you do all your anticipated notes, you go through all the construction process, you finish it all, MSBA stamps it's complete, you go to your bond council, you go out and you get your bids on your bonds, and then you start thinking about when that will kick in. And my guess is it's not gonna be until 2028 at least. So I just want to make it clear, at least in my mind, that if I vote for this project, next year my taxes are not going up $1,200 or $2,000. It will be at least a 5-year or 3 to 5 year process before we actually begin to feel the actual impact of this. That's what I want to know. Because I think people feel that if they vote tomorrow, or they vote in November, next June, their taxes are going up $2,000, and that's not going to happen. Because I know that for a fact.
You're somewhat correct. It's true that the bonding doesn't happen right away, since the vote happens or even next year. It does take time for that to happen. It is done differently in different towns. So some towns may bond prior to construction for the whole project, others sometimes will bond just for the construction period, or take a building loan for the construction period and then bond at the end of it. So it can vary. That decision ultimately is part of bond council or council's decision making, really. But yes, you're correct. It's not going to trigger this tax increase next year.
Great.
I see you know.
You love me, Greg, come on. Again, Ralph Page, Town Council President. I did want to touch on okay, I did want to touch on a couple things. The first is your $25 tax limit. This debt exclusion does not take us away from that $25 exclusion. What this debt exclusion means is that we can go above the 2.5% per year. We still have to stay under the cap of $25. So to Marilyn's point, what happens if all of a sudden our values plummet and our tax rate has to go up because we need X amount of money? Well, the good note is we're looking right now, if everything works out, our tax rate will be about $18.50 right now. If we add $3.50 to it, it still brings us up to $21, $22. So we still have some room. God forbid something happens, you know what it means? It means we have to do cuts. It means we have to do cuts in the town, cuts in the budget and stuff. Because by state law, you have to stay under the $25. So with that being said, I want to jump into that beautiful screen that you had showing the new school. And one of my questions was the maintenance on it. I've been talking for months, I love the trees, it looks beautiful. Who's gonna clean up all the leaves? How are you gonna plow that parking lot with, the DPW? I'm assuming there's curbs around every single one of those islands. Who's gonna replace the grass every year? We have a high school now where I look at the Memorial Garden out front, and the shrubs didn't get trimmed. We're talking 15, 20 shrubs. There is a ton more maintenance in that school, and we have to realize that we have to keep this up. And again, I'm not saying don't vote for the school because you can't keep it up, but these are added costs that we have to look at. You know, the fields, they're gonna be beautiful, they're gonna be all new. We still have to mow them, we still have to maintain them. So, stripe them. I mean, these are just little costs that are added in as we go along. If we want the new facility, and you vote for the new facility, just understand that those are gonna be added costs that are not included in the school numbers. Those are gonna be added into the general budget. It'll be a cost of the DPW. The DPW is gonna come to us and probably ask for 1 or 2 more employees or more equipment to maintain. You have a slide up there as far as square footage. It showed total gross square footage, and then there was, I believe it's net square footage. That's the one. So net floor area is actually decreasing, but the total gross floor area is increasing. Can you, I mean, so the net floor area is what, the usable space, and the gross floor area is the total? Hold on.
The difference here is, what, part of what's changed in 2023, so all of our walls are way thicker. So you've got thicker walls, that's part of the gross, as well as the corridor spaces, the row spaces in between spaces, the chases, mechanical spaces that are vertical stairwells, those are all part of that difference. So, yeah, that's why you have that difference. So the school, the original school would have had a tighter net to gross ratio than the new school because of how school buildings have changed.
So if I'm understanding that the school's bigger, but the usable space is smaller.
In some ways, but part of what is very just challenging in this school are the spaces that, the vocational spaces that were built in the 70s are actually full of a lot of things that are not well utilized. Like you have a lot of vacant storage. The art rooms are oversized and they actually only use small portions of it. So there is a lot of odd kind of weird ways. There's extra locker room spaces. So there's a lot of strange things like that in the school currently. So as a whole, the school at its prime had probably 1,000 students.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was built for a larger population than it currently has. And to people who are asking about that number of 800, it is 800. It is certainly anticipated that it would be able to handle more students than 800. There's a factor of assumption there of growth. And MSBA requires that we anticipate if you really had an exceptional boom in town, where would you add on? So we've also shown them the option of how you would add on if you needed to, 20 years down the road, if the school grew beyond its capacity, but this 800 is perfectly comfortable because again, the size that changed. But the net growth is very different today than it would have been.
Two other questions. So, you said the school's going to be all electric. What do we have for a backup? Do you have a generator proposed? And if so, I'm assuming it's not an electric generator. So at some point we will be using natural gas, or I'm assuming it's going to be a natural gas backup. It's a diesel.
Because of the size of the generator at that size, we priced out those options and checked the efficiency results. And the diesel perform better and more affordable. So it's very large generator.
You want to repeat it?
Yeah, just to summarize, how did you do it? Diesel?
He's in front of the speaker.
So we priced out both diesel and natural gas, because it was desired to make gas on that currently, so should we look at that? But the size of this generator, the need for it to be high efficiency and operating and effective, not because we're relying on it. The diesel generator outperformed and was lower in cost than the natural gas generator.
How much of the school will actually be able to be run off of the backup generator? Is it just for emergency? Or is this school going to be able to be used in case of an emergency as a shelter?
There are.
Dory.
The hobble guy is up.
There you go.
There's probably many buildings in town, and I expect this to be far more resilient, far more supportive of the town's needs in an emergency. But that said, there's specific requirements for a heating and cooling shelter that would actually add cost to the project. So it's not technically designed to serve as one of those. The generator will support the elevators, the kitchen, all of the electrical emergency lighting, and some portion of the heating and cooling system, but it's not meant to keep the entire school operating. That would be an enormously larger generator. Again, the other thing that's changed is these buildings are constructed with so much more insulation that they don't lose heat and cooling as quickly as the building does here today. So even if power goes off, you actually have a longer period of comfort before you have as many concerns as you would in the building today. So that's one of the advantages. But it covers a portion of the building's operation so that it's an effective building. And some we'll be detailing that more in the next year. So there are choices to be made specifically about, okay, do we want to keep power, in the medical suite, in the guidance suite, or where, so we can tailor it, but we've designed it to a certain size and this will be for cost.
Are you bringing natural gas into the kitchen?
No, we started out.
All electric?
Yeah, and actually they're already all electric. So we were assuming initially we were looking at natural gas, thinking we have natural gas, keep that. Because that is the hardest point of all electric typically, just in the kitchen area. But this district has already got all electric facilities, and those facilities, the new options for heating in kitchens are actually quite a bit better. So all electric was, once we were at that point, same with science labs. That's been very quickly shifting. We've been, as designers, have been kind of really holding back, saying let's use gas in science labs. But now, actually, the options for electric Bunsen burner systems are quite a bit better. So, it's shifted. There's no point putting the gas infrastructure into a school for such a small amount of use.
Hi there. I agree with my neighbor here that there seems like the landscaping is over. Is that something that can be cut in the budget?
Sure, and frankly, it's probably the first thing that you do cut, to be honest. Just because, we're trying to convey the long term of a 50-year school. So the landscape team wants to show this commitment to a shaded, biodiverse landscape that's healthy for students. There's a stormwater system here. It's very, things have changed. So we're changing the stormwater on site. So we have a different kind of ground condition, and we try and create shade because it's one of the things we do consistently across the board. In reality, obviously we know that it's more important what happens in the building than the landscape budget. And to that question, like what is it that you have to cut? If you have to cut, frankly, it's often the trees. And I'd say often in creating these renders, maybe this is a little bit, over the top, because it's showing the mature landscape that is, way out.
You just used a number of 50 years.
Yes.
Are you building a school for a 50-year useful life?
That's the MSBA's mandate to all school projects, is that they be designed to be a fit. That's just a technical kind of concept. It doesn't mean that it would not last longer. It's that is the requirement that's expected of us. In reality, this school was not designed for 60 years, so it is 60 years old now. So it doesn't mean that it wouldn't go beyond 50 years, but 50 years is the sort of, in the building industry, the lifespan expectancy of the school.
Just a quick point. We heard from John over here that the tax increase wouldn't kick in for 4 or 5 years. We heard from Lady up here that it might be a little bit long. I think if people knew when it was going to kick in, that it might help pass the project.
Ben was out of the room. Let's see if he's got more info. So, but the question is exactly when would the bonding come? And that's varied.
That, I hate to, that's what's so weird, that does vary from district to district. Typically we see it about a year before construction. Depending, so if the project were to pass, there are going to be, so, and that's not for the construction, and you can bond for, there's going to be costs for the design team, for the OPM, so am I understanding this correctly?
Final bond.
Yeah, so
Final construction.
Yeah, that would be
Construction
right.
bond 2 years later towards the completion of the project.
When do the taxes kick in is the question. The question is, when does the taxes kick in?
does anybody know?
I'm not sure if I have the answer for you there, sorry.
Is it 4 years, is it 2 years, is it 5 years?
Yeah, I really think it's variable, it's variable based on what the tenant said.
So I'll take a shot.
Okay.
So the precise point at which the town will bond, issue permanent bonds, that's a decision that's entirely up to the town council, the finance director, to the people in the town that make that decision. They can do that whenever they want to. If the project passes in November, you could do it November 8th if you were so inclined. But typically, most places, most communities don't bond until you're sufficiently down the road so that you understand what you're dealing with, both from a budget standpoint and from a market standpoint. Because there's a lot of things that will affect what that bond structure looks like.
You just had a bond presentation for $134 million of bond, and I don't think this was ever. And they were saying this is a 30-year bond for a school that's going to last 50 years. So I think somebody should know when that's going to go into effect.
I think what the point that people are trying to make is that there's no set time. A lot of it will be based on interest rates at the time and when the town feels like it's the best time to go out for that bond in conjunction with the finance director and bond council. I think those are both financial decisions that we make later. It is safe to say that the taxes won't start soon. It will be years from now. 2 years. That's what I've been saying too. There's 3 as an option too, but we'll clarify it more as we go forward. This is
Well, I think a lot of people know where they go for, where they
Yeah.
want to go for.
Yep,
I think it's a very important question.
We'll continue to work on that. Yep. Okay, listen, we hit our hour-and-a-half mark, so we're gonna call it a night tonight. So thankful that everybody came here tonight. Remember, November 7th is the vote. Everybody's going to be heard. Thank you so much for coming. Good night.